called to order. Let's call the roll.
Commissioner Davidson?
Here.
Commissioner Dodd?
Here.
Commissioner Irvin?
Here.
Commissioner Phillips?
Present.
Commissioner Johnson?
Present.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Chairman McAdoo?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Next on the agenda, approval of minutes, Vice Chairman Anthony Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have reviewed the minutes, and they all are in order, so I'd move to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I hear a second? Second. Second, Commissioner Wilson. All those in favor? Next on the agenda is public comments, and we do have two public comments tonight. First one is Sarah Calendar. Time frame of 3 minutes.
I'm with Main Street Murfreesboro, the executive director of the nonprofit. The historic downtown in Murfreesboro has grown over the last 37 years of the Main Street program as a central location to shop, meet friends, work, and take care of government needs. It has been revived and considered by some as a destination place, but it still needs our help to meet its full potential and stand competitively against neighboring downtown communities and even shopping districts within our own city that have gotten a lot of attention recently with new growth and housing options. Historic districts typically have a variety of housing sizes, conditions, ages, quality, and price. Historic downtowns have long been recognized for their contribution to our community's cultural, aesthetic, and social character. The challenge our downtown now faces is lack of housing for people who want to live in and experience the heart of our city. Our older and historic neighborhoods have served generations of families well. Now our downtown must meet the demand for more housing to provide homes for the young, homes for our working class, our community servants, including teachers, firefighters, police, and local government employees, as well as homes for retired citizens. Historic preservation began as a grassroots movement, and it largely remains so today. Nothing is considered historically or culturally significant without an advocate who speaks up why the site, building, or cultural practice is important. Historic designation is a public recognition that a site's history is important for everyone to know about. For that reason, preservation is also important for social cohesion. It is a tool that allows community members to identify and protect the spaces that are significant to the collective memory and identity of that community. For the Murfreesboro Historic Business District to move to the next level of being considered a true destination place, we must welcome growth while at the same time protecting our historic authenticity. In order to achieve this, our downtown community needs more space for retail, restaurants, and office use. Also, our downtown needs to prepare for tourism with hotels and adequate parking and signage. Lastly, our downtown needs more housing options. The apartment and condo mixed-use option is one way to encourage residential growth, creating a walkable downtown that supports and encourages locally owned businesses and enhances our sense of place as a destination to visit. The overall renovations proposed for the Broad Street and Church Street entrances of our historic downtown will be a game changer for years to come for all of our community members who have invested in having a small business downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Josh Reynolds.
Good
afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. I stand before you as a resident of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County, and I stand here in support of the Broad Street development and all that that means for what we have going on. I am a small business owner. I have a couple of businesses on the square. We operate a co-working space with mailboxes, and we have some pop-up retail. And then I also spend a lot of time in commercial development around the nation at this point, and moving all of that into Rutherford County. So very excited for all of those pieces. I'm also here tonight representing the hotel that will potentially be built and developed inside of the Broad Street development. I've spent the last about 8 months, I had to modify my speech a little bit, we've given it a couple times now, about the last 8 months developing the opportunity for the hotel. This includes several independent national feasibility studies where we have outside groups come through and look at the housing opportunities and the retail. We look at the available rooms from a hotel room standpoint, what's different events and things that are happening. We've worked with the Rutherford Chamber. We worked obviously with the city very close on that. Both of those studies came back very positive. Both of them are 100% dependent upon the development as a whole and as it was presented, the Broad Street development with the parking, apartments, and condominiums, both, and the retail as well, and seeing the potential growth and future of that. So much so that Hilton International has run their own feasibility study, and they have actually come back and presented us with an offer to build a Tapestry hotel that includes a financial commitment on their side of things, because they're excited about what's happening here in the city and in the county and want to be a part of all of that growth. And so not only are we here for the hotel, we also have a partnership on the building, a downtown building, and so I stand here representing building ownership, small businesses, a happy resident, and hopefully a hotel very close in the future. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Also on the agenda for the two public comments, we will be discussing Broad Street redevelopment on the agenda, so if you want to stay and be involved in that conversation, maybe feel free to stay. Next on the agenda, public health and safety buildings update. Mr. Dodd.
Good evening, Commissioners. I will touch on the Kittrell location. I know we closed that out last month, but we had our grand opening this past Sunday. Everything went well. It went accordingly. Similar to Rockville, the first responders are excited to be in the facility. They're enjoying being there. They're enjoying everything that it has to offer versus, where they came from. So far that's been a smooth transition. We haven't had any outstanding issues to report, and I'll move on to the Las Casas site. So as you can see, site work is ongoing. The project is progressing well. The mason has completed all the block work. The electrical, plumbing, mechanical rough ends have all passed inspection. The damp-proof sealant is complete now. The mezzanine slab over the tornado shelter is complete. Steel trusses are at about 90%. They were hoping to get all those set and finish up this week, but I think the weather might delay them into early next week on the trusses. Light gauge steel was delayed. They estimate that arrival between October the 2nd and the 6th. Heavy timbers have been installed. They are now at 100%, awaiting stain and seal. The stone veneer is approximately 60 to 70% complete. The stud walls they're now underway at roughly 25 to 35% complete. Our 4 weeks look ahead on the Las Casas site is we should see them start and complete the fire line and the vault. We should start to see them some roof decking, possibly some shingles by the end of the month. the GC is really wanting to get this building dried in before our winter months arrive, and I think we're on track to do so. And that completes my report on Las Casas, and I'll flip through just a couple more pictures to let you see different angles. That picture there is at the rear. That would be as if you were pulling into the fire base.
Adam, as you're going through that, anticipating an opening date late winter or very early spring?
Well, the general contractor has one thing right now that could delay the opening, and that's the main electrical panel has been back ordered. But we've been working with the architect and the GC, and we're looking to change that panel to a comparable panel that the general contractor might be able to get their hands on sooner. To answer your question, we're still shooting for a February date. If we can get our hands on a comparable electrical panel for that service to be pulled into, then we should be toward the end of February. That's the date that I've been given right now. With the delays, if we can't find a suitable replacement, we could be looking at late March, early April. But that's the only delay that I can report right now. Everything else is on time.
Plus it's winter months. Winter months. Winter months.
Yes. But if there are no further questions regarding Las Casas, I'll move on to Walter Hill. So last week, the primary, secondary lines were completed. They're now at 100% on electrical, plumbing. The mechanical rough end is roughly 80 to 90%. This picture was taken this week. I was out there. They might very well have that rough end complete by tomorrow. Like I said, with the weather, it could be early next week before they start calling in their inspections. The transformer pad is complete. The tornado shelter pad is complete. And if I have it, that was Tuesday, and you can see that they're getting ready to pour the slab over on the fire base side. That was completed yesterday. So they were moving over into the living quarters, and then today and tomorrow was supposed to be scheduled for the remainder of the slab, which would have been over on the EMS side, but I'm pretty sure with these weather delays, that's going to roll over into next week as well. The fire, and yeah, the EMS bays, that's next week. I do estimate that the entire slab should be complete by the end of next week. They've started the CMU walls. They're roughly about 30% on those. The 4 weeks look ahead at Walter Hill would be the completion of the slab, like I said, between October the 2nd and the 6th, completion of electrical, plumbing, mechanical rough end with inspections to follow. The CMU walls will be ongoing. We should start to see them forming up for the mezzanine slab over the shelter. They should begin site fire line work. And unlike Las Casas, I have no delays to report at this time regarding the Walter Hill location. Steel trusses, light gauge trusses, which will follow soon after, they're scheduled to be delivered to the site mid-October. So I have nothing negative to report at this time regarding our schedule on the Walter Hill location. I will come back to those slides. They're out of order. Last month, I was asked for an update on the Plainview location. So what you see there, I wanted to put this in perspective for you, Commissioners, so that you can kind of see the potential site, that the area of the public health and safety building that they're targeting. As you can see the water line, 16-inch water line coming in on Sledge, and then if you see that orange to your right of Otter Way, that's where your 4-inch sewer force main line is. So all utilities are there. Like I said, this is just to give you a perspective. Plainview Elementary School and to the location that we're targeting. That's the only update regarding Plainview that I have at this time.
What about the sewage hookup with Murfreesboro?
Well, it's based on conversations with the PBA and the architect and the general contractor. It's the most logical direction would be to tie into that sewer line, so it's my understanding that that's how we'll proceed.
Okay, any questions on Plainview?
Now we're going to go back a couple. So, Commissioner Johnson, last month we spoke about the property on Singer Road, and after meeting with Bishop, our solid waste director, on site, we kind of looked the area over and looked at what kind of debris was left. It's mostly foundation. It's a lot of rock. There are some building materials there on site. Bishop prepared an estimate regarding removing the remains of the old existing house. That's not the house that we just sold, obviously. That was the original house that was there, more centered to the parcel. But he anticipates anywhere from 7 to 10 30-yard containers worth of debris, some equipment rentals for a skid steer, excavator, some equipment that he doesn't have that would be needed, about 3 days worth of work, 2 operators, and fuel cost would be roughly $4,200 to complete. If we do it in-house, would be roughly $4,200 to finish cleaning the site.
Any questions? Commissioner Johnson?
Sorry. You're speaking of where Mr. Lamb's original house was?
That's the
not the
original
one-
house centered to the parcel.
Are you including the barns, or is that separate?
No, that's separate.
Okay, I thought it was.
Yeah, that's what you see in the picture, centered to, well, what looks like the remains. Let me see if I have a couple of more shots that you can see. That'll kind of give you the footprint. That'll put it to scale versus the house that was removed 2 months ago, and versus the location of the original house on that parcel that we're looking to finish cleaning up. Is that something that you want me to pursue?
Commissioner Johnson?
Thinking you may want to hold off until we get rid of the other buildings, because there may be something left that we need to include. and just wipe it all out at one time. Thought.
Any other questions? Florence Road project? Any other report?
Is a vacant property off of Weekly Lane. And now this is something that we've been monitoring since the emissions is no longer there. We've tried to post signs. We've tried to put up some chain and block those entrances off. But if you've ever seen that property, it's going to be awful hard to stop someone from pulling in there. We find there are trucks, heavy equipment, and trailers and stuff that are parking there on that vacant parking lot. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and maybe it's something that this committee would, if they saw maybe the need for it to be addressed, that could.
Commissioner Johnson?
I'm not aware of who was doing the utility work, excuse me, on Weekly, but they were parking their heavy equipment there, and you can see out there in the middle where they tore up the asphalt. My thought is they should either repair it or reimburse us for repairs. It's not like we're never going to use that. We do have a purpose. One thing we're looking at is expanding the county court clerk's office parking. That's a possibility of moving over in that area. Not that far down, but a part of that. So I don't know if it's possible we could find out who tore it up.
Yes, Smyrna?
We can definitely
Yeah.
look into it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I don't believe it was Smyrna Utilities, but they probably
Probably
know
got
who
an
was doing the
idea.
work out there.
Yeah. Find that out and bring it back to us next meeting? Next meeting, not next week.
yes, I will look into it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Adam, if we're looking to keep people off of that piece of property, shouldn't we put up some kind of gates?
Well, and that's kind of what I was alluding to, is that there's really you would have to fence off the entire property, because there's really no ditches, there's no elevation changes. So we can try to put the gates up, and that's what we've done. We kind of a temporary, just some chain, some caution chain, and because there's two entrances onto the site. There on your left side, there's one main entrance down at the bottom of your screen. But so we've been unsuccessful, and like I said, it's going to be awful hard to keep someone off of that parking or off of the property in general, unless it was fully fenced. I don't know that that's necessarily something we should pursue, but it's a vacant parking lot, but it's our property, and there is some damage there. You can see in the picture. It's really a matter of how you want to pursue dealing with it.
Get us a bid on fencing it?
I can.
Bring it back to next month meeting?
Question. Do we have any signage out there that says no trespassing private property?
There have been signs in the past. They're not there anymore. So I can try and put new signs up, and they've taken the chains down. They've, like I said, it's going to be hard to police something like that. Pretty tough.
Other questions? Any other ideas? That piece? I think we get a better picture if he bring back that bid next month. And we'll probably try to make a decision from there. Okay, anything else? Al?
No, sir. Thank you,
Any
Commissioner.
questions for Adam? Do I have a motion to approve
Motion to
item
approve.
report?
Motion to approve the reports.
Motion second. All those in favor? Next on the agenda, TDOT acquisition of property for a new turn lane at Siegel High School and Middle School.
Commissioners, good evening. Commissioners, good evening. In front of Siegel High School and Siegel Middle School, TDOT is proposing to add a turning lane onto West Thompson Lane. They will be paying for the expense of adding a turn lane there. If you've been out in that area when schools are in the morning starting or ending, you will see there's a lot of traffic in the area, so it's something that's desperately needed. The school board has approved this some time ago, but since the property is owned by the county has to approve the easements and the property be sold since it's in the name of the county. So TDOT is proposing to purchase 0.219 acres from the county for the turn lane, and also needs a slope easement of 0.197 acres and a temporary construction easement of about a half acre to get the turn lane built. TDOT would pay the county the appraised value for the land. TDOT has had an appraisal done on it. The value has come in at $58,100 for the acquisition of the property and the easements. So it's something that the school board will want to be approved even if the county was not getting paid for it, because a turn lane is desperately needed out in that area. So we would ask respectfully that the commission consider a motion to approve the conveyance of the 0.219 acres, the slope easement, the temporary construction easement to TDOT, as we've got presented, and to authorize the county mayor to execute the documents to TDOT that's needed for those conveyances.
Questions?
School board has already approved it.
They have, yes.
School board has approved it. What
Correct.
meeting recently?
It was over a year ago, and it's been processed of getting approved by TDOT.
They're still okay with it?
Yes.
Yeah, that project we looked at, Commissioner Phillips, about a year and a half ago, and it was approved by everybody, but just now moving on it, so.
Anyone else have to approve it, Mr. Chairman, other than this committee?
The money's involved, so I will push it on the budget after, if we approve it. Budget can send it on to the full commission.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve, second by Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion? I call the roll.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Chairman McAdoo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. Next on the agenda, Broad Street Redevelopment Project and TIF. We have two representatives tonight, Bart Klein and I think Jim Murphy is going to present us.
Mr. Chairman, before
ahead.
we get into this, there's been some questions as to what a TIF is and how it actually works. I'd like to, for our finance director, Michael Smith, to kind of come up and bring us up to date on what a TIF actually is and what it's intended for and how it works.
That's a good idea. Some of us sat through a meeting on TIF about a year and a half ago, I think. Commissioner Dodd, myself, and the rest of them I knew, and it's a good idea for Mike to come up here. I don't think we need a motion on that for him to bring that information to this committee. So, Mike, will you come on up and go over it and answer questions on it?
So I want to give a full disclaimer. I know there are probably at least 2 attorneys in the room who are probably experts on TIFs, so I will say that. But I will speak from kind of the county finance office point of view and kind of how it's going to affect us. Especially, I have met with Bart Klein and kind of looked at this. So I'll speak a little bit using theirs as an example, and hopefully I don't get it wrong and Bart doesn't look at me mean from there. So in general, a TIF is tax increment financing. And so I'm going to just kind of give the 50,000-foot overview. Generally, it cannot go over 20 years unless approved by the state. The comptroller's office would have to approve that, and I believe the way I read the law, if it's in the best interest is the way the law reads, but the state has to approve that if it goes past 20 years. I do believe there's a 10-year on retail, if it's specifically retail. And then it can only be used for the public infrastructure part. So I believe in the deal you're fixing to hear that this is for the public infrastructure part. I believe the one that you're fixing to hear would be for is a 20-year TIF. And so one of the unique things that differentiates TIFs from pilots, because we do have quite a few pilots. You know, we've had a pilot for many years with Nissan that just rolled off, those types of things. So really the difference is on a TIF, we're going to get the dedicated portion for debt service. And so as that debt service tax rate changes throughout the years, that TIF rate that we were going to receive for that portion is going to be a little fluid. The other unique thing about TIFs, and the way I've read this one that you're fixing to hear, is once they receive the dollar amount, that TIF is ended, even if it doesn't hit the 20 years. So I believe this one's for 26 million. And so based on the numbers, I think that have been estimated on this one here, there would be a very good chance that you could receive it ahead of 20 years, which would end that tax increment financing there. That's kind of some of the major differences between that and a pilot. Pilots can be other unique, it can be flat amounts, different things like that. Pilot amounts go directly to the county general fund for the county. So that is one unique thing. When you see pilots, all pilot revenue for us goes to the county general fund. TIFs, we're going to get our debt service portion. Now, this $26 million sounds like a large number, but you got to combine that also with the portion of the city as well. So it's not like the county property tax or county portion is only going to fund that $26 million. So that kind of covers I think I hit all the high points. Is there any?
If I could ask a quick question.
Phillips?
My understanding of TIFs historically has been for a revitalization type of process, not exclusively, but for the most part, a revitalization process, especially in an older downtown district or area, and that's exactly what both of these, Smyrna and Murfreesboro, are looking to do. And me, the thought process behind this is, as we get into updating our long-term comprehensive land use plan, we're talking about vertical instead of horizontal building, and some of these accomplishes some of those particular goals. But the thought process is government, in my estimation, investing in revitalization of a historical or a downtown district that is in need of that revitalization. Am I kind of sort of on target?
That's correct. And I think the other thing I failed to mention to point out is I think the other major incentive to do a TIF versus a pilot is a TIF, you're really trying to get that revitalization without recourse for the county taxpayer. I think is probably one of the main incentives of a TIF versus some other options that you would have at the disposal. And so I think based on this plan, I think that would fall directly under this, would be a revitalization. with as little or no, in this case, no recourse to the county taxpayer, because I do believe in both of these instances tonight, there's only one piece of property that is receiving, we're receiving property tax from. I believe the city has bought the other portion, which was a car lot on the corner. I don't know if they bought, I'm looking at the city manager back there. So I think we're only receiving in the neighborhood of $2,000 to $4,000 a year currently in these projects. And so I think the theory behind the TIF is without recourse that we would revitalize that area really with no cost to the tax base there.
Commissioner Dodd, are we under a TIF agreement on the United Methodist property?
We only have one current TIF agreement, and it is the one over here at the United Meth. The rest of what the county holds is pilots.
Yes, sir. That is the one that you alluded to a moment ago, that we were educated by the IBD and the attorneys for the TIF programs.
Thank you.
And I think that one was right before I arrived here, that one had been renewed or extended.
Any other questions on TIF?
I just want to get on the same page.
Commissioner Irvin?
And I've had discussions with a whole host of folks at this point on it, but I want to make sure, right, currently, for example, the Murfreesboro downtown, there's almost no tax, okay, right? We're collecting almost nothing on it. If this development were to occur, for example, or I'll just say a hypothetical TIF development, okay, and the hypothetical TIF development, once built, would begin generating at some point, when finished construction, I guess maybe let's say a hypothetical $1 million, okay, in tax. Using our actual percentages, we would get around the $210,000, I guess, as to the county for debt service, and the remaining $800,000 roughly would go to the developer for purposes of paying their debt, basically. And this can only be used, okay, so there's a pretty big differential. In other words, we would ordinarily collect $1 million in tax if it were economically viable. Now, as I understand it, you can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of these involved projects that are not economically viable. In other words, the free market doesn't work, okay, because nobody will finance it, nobody will put equity into it, et cetera, et cetera. So at that point, you're basically looking at a tax incentive to help out the neighborhood, to help out the planning piece. But there is a cost. I mean, if it were to develop in 5 years, and let's use hypothetically at 5 years economic conditions in the county, hypothetically, changed, then at the end of 5 years, the project's fully developed, we would get the full $1 million in property tax, and there wouldn't be any reduction, basically, to the dedicated portion. So if we think this is a cool idea on revitalization, and I view that personally as more of a city decision than a county decision. That's, as an aside, Mr. Chairman, that's one of my questions. Are we as a county looking at the county tax effect, or are we looking at it from a broader perspective? And I don't know how it's historically been done, and I'm not sure how this committee necessarily looks at it. If it's a broader historical, in other words, if we can go back and basically second guess the city council, I understand it. If our mission is to instead look at the county tax implications and see what's the county getting, that's a different question. But that's an aside. That's kind of what are we deciding tonight, okay? And as a county generally. So with that kind of overview, I'm just wanting, number one, to confirm, but also I wanted to ask, there are additional benefits, for example, sales tax, lodging tax, things along those lines that could come into play. And could you give us an overview in terms of, from the projections I've seen, it's not much, okay? But, you know, people can quibble about that. But I'm trying to get a sense for, can you explain, not in terms of numbers, but how that would work for sales tax, lodging tax, other potential revenue sources that would decrease. Remember, I talked about the $1 million minus the dedicated portion of 200,000. How much of the additional 800 might one expect to recoup from that, out of that 800 through additional development, et cetera? Because, that's part of what goes into the calculation, and I'll give you the opportunity to respond.
So you are correct. In your example, there are a lot of hypotheticals there as far as, you are correct. The county would be in trying to incentivize a redevelopment there and essentially putting some skin in the game there to try to help incentivize that. But at the same time, market conditions, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have predicted maybe where we're at now. So I think you would have to make some assumptions based on interest rates. What would happen if we didn't do this? What would the free market say there? Would it happen in 5 years? Would it happen in 10 years? Would it happen in 20? A lot of variables there. So you're correct there. If we didn't do this and the free market in a capitalistic society, it happened over the course of 10 or 20 years, we would get the entire property tax there. And then I think to your question, as far as, yes, we would get our portion of the lodging tax. The city gets their portion. We would get our sales tax portion. And then, of course, sales tax for us would really be, from that location, would really be to fund the county school system's operations, since that's in a municipality. But we would get, I don't have their exact numbers in front of me, but we would get the lodging portion, the sales tax, and, of course, the dedicated portion. I don't know what their, Bart, do you have your numbers? I don't have those in front of me as far as what their lodging and sales tax estimates were. I do. A year? So we'd get, if in their example, the 84,000 of sales tax, 48,000 would go to education, and of that 48, of that half, 85 roughly percent would go to our county school system. So you're not quite getting to, in your example, if I was running those numbers, you're not quite getting to the 800,000, but we would collect a portion of the, kind of make up some of that with the lodging, sales tax. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, so it'd be an extra, in the hypothetical we've been talking about, an extra 120,000 roughly. I'm sorry, say it again. 360. So there'd still be, I guess, 440, give or take, out there. Okay, so that's the tax that, if it were to develop, and who knows, as you pointed out, the timing, that we would collect whenever it, or start to collect whenever it developed full, and that assumes that it develops fully as opposed to some incremental development. But I'm trying to get a sense for the analysis. I appreciate any other comments.
Like I said, I don't have that directly in front of me. I did look over their numbers. They seem reasonable from the high-level view. Without comment, I know they're going to do a presentation. I do know they got the assessment values from the property assessor's office, so I feel fairly confident in those numbers since they came from the county. And I think their lodging, hotel, motel tax was consistent. I believe that the hotel will be down here on the corner would be consistent with the hotel prices that I saw, kind of consistent over with the Avenue. So I felt that those were in line with market. I do believe there would be a gap between what we, I guess, would be giving up or increment financing for the property tax portion from what the lodging and the sales tax. I do believe there would be a gap there from just looking at the numbers, but as far as is it worth it or not, I step back from that. That would be y'all's choice there.
Commissioner Johnson?
Mr. Chair, on our agenda, we're speaking now of number 6 on our agenda, Broad Street Redevelopment Project and TIF. We haven't had the presentation yet. I would like to see the presentation. Then we get into all of the hypotheticals and whatever we want to discuss. But I would like for us to just get back with what's on the agenda, and that's the presentation. And I know we have the maybe city and the developers' representatives here, if they could come up and just give them.
I think now's a good time. All we wanted was Mike to give us an overview of what TIF meant for you new members on the commission. Like I said, Commissioner Dodd and I have sat through this, so we know. So now's a good time to go ahead and ask for the developers to come forward. And Mike, you stay around just in case. But now would be a good time to for them to make the presentations and this Broad Street redevelopment project and TIF.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask, I just want to make sure I'm clear on, in terms of the Property Management Committee, are we asking, are we revisiting what the Murfreesboro City Council's already, all that analysis, or are we only really focusing on the finances for the account? I'm just trying to understand historically what's been the process, and I want to make sure I'm clear on what the decision process is. What we're deciding.
I can clear it up real quick. Real quick. I have attended several meetings with different groups on this project, and basically this project lies within the 18th district. So therefore, they did have the courtesy to include the 18th district commissioner with this project, and this project has been before the city council, and all they are doing is presenting us with an overview, and I think maybe I may be responsible in some point because I didn't want this committee left behind in knowing what was going on in the Broad Street area. That's basically what it is. It's not asking this committee to approve this project. It's not asking this committee to give us no money. All we're doing is trying to keep the city and the county, especially the county, updated with what's going on in the Broad Street project. And it's my district, and we have brought a project up here before like this, which was in Commissioner Dodd's district, I think. And it's for information, because it's bad when you look and see all these projects going on and you don't know what's going on. But that's what it's for, and I really pushed it to get this for this tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the clarification.
Respond to that a little bit. I'm Jim Murphy. I represent the city of Murfreesboro, and I'm one of the people that the finance director said is somebody that knows all about this TIF stuff, because with my partner, Tom Trent, we do a lot of these. So part of the process to get a TIF district created is that it has to go through multiple layers of approval, okay? The first layer is the Industrial Development Board, and they have to approve what's called an economic impact plan.
Commissioner Dodd?
Can I get closer? Oh, sorry. Is that better? Okay, so the Industrial Development Board first has to approve an economic impact plan, and that shows the area that the increment will be created from. So you have a plan that sets forth what the project is, what area will be included in the area that'll generate the tax increment. And then that plan has to first be approved by the industrial board, and then it has to be approved by, if the city taxes are being used, it has to be approved by the city, and if county taxes are being used, it has to be approved by the county. So you do need to approve the economic impact plan. That's the overarching plan document that allows the increment. It defines how the increment will be used, and I think, as the finance director mentioned here, the increment is being used to build public infrastructure, and public infrastructure is defined in the tax increment statute to include what you would consider typical public infrastructure, like roads and utilities, but it also includes parking garages, either private or public parking garages. And the reason parking garages are included is back in 2012, the comptroller's office went through and modified they had the state legislature modify the tax increment financing provisions that apply to the Industrial Development Board. And my partner and I, Tom Trent, were on the committee that the comptroller talked to about what changes needed to be made. And when we're talking about public infrastructure, I mean, we brought up the fact that most of the projects that we've done needed help to build parking facilities, either surface parking or parking garages, but particularly parking garages, because they cost a lot of money and developers sometimes don't want to build them. And so the local governments wanted to incentivize developers to build parking garages so that they would have parking for the public downtown, in their downtown areas or around these developments. So that's why parking garages are included, is because the comptroller agreed that that was clearly something that was worthy of tax increment financing being used for. So here, that's what this project is about, is to fund public infrastructure, which includes the parking garages. So again, we've got a plan that has to be approved, and the part of the plan is the project, the Broad Street project. And we'll let Mr. Klein describe what the Broad Street project is, and then I'll be happy to try to answer any other TIF-related questions you might have.
And if you let me get through
I'll come in and spend time on talking about the TIF. So that's kind of our program. So we'll give you an advance
we want to lay
notice.
the groundwork,
right?
Kind of what the last 2 years has how we got to where we are.
Can I just follow up one particular thing?
Go ahead.
This presentation is for our information only. This committee will not make any decisions. That will actually go before our budget committee and then before the full commission.
Go from here, we're going to try to send it from here to steering, from steering to budget, from budget to the full commission.
So this committee really won't make any decisions, but this committee could move to support the project and
Could
forward
move
it.
to support and move it on to
But
steering.
we don't even have to do that.
We don't even have to do that. Correct. Thank you, Commissioner Phillips.
We'd like support. My name is Bart Klein with Klein Swinney Associates. We're part of the team, so I'm here representing the architecture and engineering piece, but also a big part of the planning and programming piece. We've been working on this project for about 2 years with the city, with the county. We've done everything from soil investigations, abatement investigation, utility investigations, because it's a large project, a large commitment, and we got to have all our ducks in a row. And it probably spent a couple years just to get a development agreement with the city based off lessons learned from a previous project. So in that, we're in deep. We've kind of uncovered every stone we know to uncover. And I heard a lot talking about incentives. So this is an urban renewal project, getting back to what Mr. Phillips said earlier. You typically, my grandparents were here. They had the old semi, sales place. But in 20 years, if you think where development's gone, where has it gone? Have you seen development downtown other than a courthouse or a police station? And the reason is it's too expensive, because you have the infrastructure you got to detangle, you got the parking you got to deal with. So all your development goes out to the periphery, goes to Medical Center Parkway. And I think you've experienced that. So that's really what the TIF is about, is bringing that development home and taking what's cherished and making it part and revitalizing it. The image you see up top, you all know where you are, but the blue behind City Hall in the empty parking lot in front of NHC is about 7.3 acres. That's the development area. The blue across from Broad Street is the area that the city is doing a project called Town Creek. It's a public park project. They're building a pedestrian bridge. They've received grants from TDOT for the bridge already, and I think they're in the process of receiving more. So this is really kind of a public-private working together for the greater good for a project, and I think this project really sells that well and shows that well. The team, so I've talked about myself, HRP, local firm that does development. They're not a native to Murfreesboro. They did the Banks project with, I think, the late Mr. Pirtle, developed in and around Nashville, doing the same kind of project in Huntsville, very sophisticated. We are working with them right now north of Nashville, in Columbia on a mixed use, and in Huntsville, and they're very excited about the project. Local civil engineer Matt Taylor is working with us on the team. And then Al Miller with First Financial is a part of the team and very excited about it and helping on the funding aspect. A little bit about Dean and Ryan and Todd, and some of them are sitting in the back. They've had this company for about 20 years. They got a great resume, a great portfolio. They check out. Really, they're a good partner with the county and city on the project. They did bring in a gentleman by the name of Todd Sewart. He came from Gaylord Entertainment, and he's done over $8 billion in transactions. So you got a seasoned team here. One thing interesting about the team, they also perform as a GC. So right now you see a lot of people on the side of development that are stopping and starting, but when you have a developer that both uses GCs and can act as a GC, you're providing a different group that can really withstand bad times because they know how to get around it. Some recent project of theirs, Ridgeview, really just getting across that you have a nice team in front of you today. Some of you guys may remember the Historic Bottom Study. So the Historic Bottom Study was initiated by the city, and this project is rooted in that bottom study. And the bottom study was, how do we rejuvenate the downtown area in the bottoms, walkability, connection, and this project actually takes on the major aspects of the bottom study, and that's where it's rooted into. So this proposed development also took care of a lot of the proposed issues in the bottom study that the city wanted to see come forward and take care of in the development. Similar developments and demographics. So you guys are familiar with Indian Lake, Berry Farms, Harpeth Square, which is right downtown Franklin. We're very similar to that. The average income is between $120,000 to $140,000. We see this being targeting young professionals, empty nesters, and it's just that type of development. Going over the mixed-use components, we have 239 for-lease dwelling units. We have 80 to 100 for-sale dwelling units. We have 80 to 150 key hotel. We have 30 to 40,000 square foot of retail and structured parking for all. There's roughly 780 spaces on this site. 715 of them are within parking structures. One thing added to this project was what is called the Hometown Heroes. It's earmarked for teachers, police and firefighters. So of that, the apartments, for instance, 5% of the dwelling units will receive a 30% reduction. So if it's a $1,500 one bedroom, it's costing $1,000. So it's actually a true reduction to make it affordable. And the same thing goes for the for-sale dwelling units. There is a 20% reduction for 5% of the units. So a 400,000 unit is 320,000. So they put their best foot forward on addressing that and still making the pro forma work. And that is for the life of the project. In addition to, and this is what really gets to why urban renewal projects are more expensive, why they need to be incentivized with TIF, is because they have to tackle infrastructure issues that your typical greenfield development would not. Here we're having to update the intersections at Vine and Church, widening the roads, adding ped crossings, making it safer, but it's also we have a lot of storm and sewer and utilities that have to be enhanced, improved, relocated. They're old pipes. All of that is part of those infrastructure costs. And then you have large sidewalks, 10-foot sidewalks, 4-foot grass strips, walkable community. You typically on a greenfield site where you're not as incentivized as much, you don't have all that stuff to deal with, and that's why most of your developers tend to go out to those areas. In addition, it's the parking structure, as Jim said early on. We are roughly, this is 7.2 acres. The density on this is between 75 and 110,000 square foot per acre. When you look at some other type of greenfield developments that are new town urbanism, they may be in the 15 to 20,000 square foot per acre. So if you start thinking about the amount of property and items you're putting on the property, that really tells you why the cost of the project is more expensive. It really, you know, the parking is the big deal. This is a site plan, so you guys are all oriented with Broad Street to the south of this image, but just starting on the right, the blue building, we refer that to as the WGNS building. So part of the development agreement includes that we either purchase WGNS or relocate WGNS, and we've been working with them for about a year and a half, and we are going to build them a new building on the corner in the blue building so they can basically leave their building, take a key, open it up, and not miss, you know, spectating a football game. And when they move and they're over at that site, then we can demo the rest of the buildings. And that's just the progression that has to happen. So the blue building is residential, and then when you see the pink building further down, and all the green in all these buildings represent retail at ground floor. So there's 40,000 square foot of retail that's distributed amongst the projects. It helps enhance our space. You know, we look to have some nice restaurants, just some nice retail clients that would be at that ground floor. You can see the two buildings in mid-block. The orange building is for sale product, so those are the condos. And the purple on the end is the hotel. You'll notice two parking structures. The buildings will wrap the parking structures. They won't be seen from the public realm. They back up to the back of the City Hall building. Those parking structures are roughly 700 spaces, of which there's about 300 public parking spaces within it. Plus, we have parking below the blue building. Now, if I'm moving too quick, just stall me. Overall amenities, so we want a walkable community. We want a Class A development. We want something that people want to live in. We want to be able to leave your house and go hit coffee on the square. We're going to provide everything from the EV charging stations to the fire pits to the dog washes to the dog parks, really catering to our clientele and the public as best possible. Public parks, streetscapes, this is urban, so it's going to be integrated into all the development aspects and design of the aspects of the project. Just some images that kind of reflect different amenities that you would see in a development like this that are proposed in this development. The architectural context, we're going to draw from the city and from the county, and really we don't want the development to look like it doesn't belong, and that's been, we're probably on our third or fourth rendition of sketches, and the architects in the office are pretty excited about it, but really going to draw from some of the nice architecture that you have within the county. Again, the urban element, so this is what you're going to feel and see as you walk down the street, as you go into the public realm, as you go outside on your balcony, as you're going to dinner. I mean, so we're really wanting to make it a nice environment for everyone. This is an axon view, so a massing view of the project. Everything on the site, that the buildings that have a lot of articulation of them, is our proposed development. They're all 4 stories, so the massing does not come above City Hall. So the view shed to downtown, to this building, is maintained and not impeded in any way. The only building that may be taller is the building with the blue top. That is the condo building, because we are at 80 to 100 condos, and still then we wouldn't impede on the top of the roof of City Hall. This is a view of the intersection of Church and Broad. It shows the pedestrian bridge that the city is going to build. It shows the bridge park. It shows how the building flanks, how the mixed use and the retail is at the ground floor. It energizes it. It gives you an idea of the massing and the character that we're going for. You can see on the right, that's what I refer to as the WGNS building at the empty parking lot in front of NHC. This is a view mid-block. So here you can see the entry to City Hall to the lower level parking garage, which is maintained. On the left are the condo buildings with the retail at grade. On the right are the multifamily and retail buildings. This is a sketch of the corner where the hotel is and the condo, and a little park-like area in between. And again, you know, the aesthetic, we are vertical, but we're not too vertical. So it fits the mold, to say. Here's a cross-section to show you. So the far right of this is the City Hall cross-section. You can see our buildings below. We don't impede on the eave. We don't, that first level of the garage, I think in some cases is 24 foot tall of the City Hall. If you could drive a semi in there almost. Just in general, parking, we are parking our development fully. We're not asking for any reductions in parking. Our parking garages will have public spaces within them. They will be controlled by parking equipment. They will be gated. They will be censored. The City Hall garage that's existing is roughly 600 spaces. It is currently, I believe, at like 30% capacity. We anticipate that they'll be doing some type of parking sensory items and maintain parking for city and county officials for their work. So we're not stealing parking from one to save it from the other. That game is not happening, and those are all in the development agreement, and you know what's taken us 2 years to get to. This is the development schedule. So the first top bar you see on this is the PUD and TIF process. In about 3 months to 4 months, we should be through this process, assuming this goes well. And then the second bar in blue is actually the renovations to the city-owned buildings, where they're actually moving into other buildings that they've purchased and renovated. And then when you step down and look at the next purple, blue, and red line above the green, that is construction of the WGNS building. And then when you go down from that, after the green is the demolition of all the buildings on site, and then all those big red bars is the construction of all the projects, all the buildings. You'll see the parking structures go up first because the buildings wrap the parking structures, is how you see the sequence of development take place. One thing very important to note in the development agreement, these were lessons learned by the city that were applied to the agreement, is all those little diamonds at the bottom, those are clawbacks. So if the developer doesn't perform, every 120 days, the city has the right to purchase the property back. The deal has been structured to where the WGNS empty lot can happen and take place, and let's say we have another pandemic, it can be platted out, and then the city's maintaining control so they're not left with, you know, something that they don't want. Overall, this project has about a $48 million infrastructure cost. That is the parking structures, that is the storm, that is all those different elements. We are here today to seek a TIF. Right now, the only property that generates property tax on the partial is the WGNS, and it's about $4,000 that goes to the city and county. We are seeking a 20-year TIF with a $26 million cap. The county appraised value of the development is $150 million, of which the annual property tax generated in the development pre-TIF would be 1.5. But this really spells out, you know, why the incentives have to happen, because if you think of a $160 million project, and over a third of it is infrastructure, and the parking structure being a big piece of that. These are the numbers that actually show as if the TIF happens and the proceeds that go to the city and county for each element. One thing that, you know, in the conversation of the TIF and the direct costs and what you get now, but what no one seems to talk is about, what about the residual that you get when a development happens day one? So we did an option where we looked at, you know, okay, in 20 years, the county will see 11.2 and the city will see 9 million. But when you do a spur development downtown like this, of this size, you're going to see a trickle effect of development around it. So if you were to think in the next 20 years, the same deal, you could be seeing 22 million for the county and 18 million, and that's what's going to happen. And without the TIF, it's incremental. I've listened to you talk about the area develop. Well, if it develops in 5 years, it hasn't developed in 20. In 2008, with the last boom, did it develop? There's a reason it didn't develop. And so it is. There's a philosophical side, there's a dollar side, but it is just making great places. So I'm going to turn it over to the TIF expert.
So we talked a little bit about the structure already, that the IDB first has to approve the plan, and they have approved the economic impact plan for this project. Then the city council has also approved the economic impact plan for this project, and so the county's approval is the last approval that will be needed. This money is going to be used for public infrastructure, and as a result, under state law, there's no requirement for any state approval for this economic impact plan. And it's also, the TIF duration is only going to be 20 years, and so there's no reason or no requirement that the state approve the term, because they only have to approve the term if it exceeds 20 years. So when this economic impact plan is completed, then the next step will basically be the developer implementing the development agreement that he's described with the city that requires that they meet the deadlines, and that one of the clawbacks that's in the development agreement, if at certain dates the deadlines are not met, then the city and the county can basically elect to withdraw their approval of the TIF at that point. So there really is a enforcement mechanism in this agreement to make sure that the project actually gets built. And that's one of the benefits of having a incentive program, is you actually have a mechanism to make sure that the project will get developed, and that you can get a large project developed consistently, as opposed to piecemeal development, which may or may not occur. So that's kind of how the project is structured, and why the TIF is in place, and what the benefits the city and county get from having an incentive program is you get commitments from the developer that they have to meet in order to be able to utilize the incentive. This is a reimbursement incentive, so the developer has to do the work before they get the money. And so that's another performance-based component of this, is that this isn't a situation where the developer can. And also, the most important part of a TIF is there is no money if the developer doesn't build the project, okay? I mean, this is all based on the incremental taxes that result from this new development. So if the developer doesn't generate enough incremental taxes to repay their obligations, the developer loses. There's no recourse to the city or the county or the industrial board if the incremental taxes are not sufficient to cover their need for reimbursement. So again, it's a performance-based incentive, in that you really do incentivize them to do their development and generate taxes, because unlike a pilot, which is a tax abatement where they just don't pay taxes, in a TIF, they pay taxes just like everybody else. It's just when the taxes come in, they get allocated into various pots, and the finance director did a good job describing that. You've got the current taxes, which are called the base taxes, and then you've got the dedicated taxes, which are currently, I think, 21% plus or minus, but that can change each year depending on the debt service amount that the county has in its budget. And then you've got the increment, which is the additional taxes generated from the development, and those incremental taxes are all that's available for this project. And so if the developer doesn't build the project in a way that generates those incremental taxes, there's no money for the developer to utilize to be reimbursed. So it really does provide a mechanism to make sure that the project gets done as described in this plan, because that's the basis for the estimates on what the funds on how much funds there'll be. The use of the funds is limited to the cost of developing the incentive plan, the economic impact plan. the administrative expense up to, which is an amount up to 1% annually of the increment, and then the eligible cost, which in this project are, the eligible costs are basically the two components of public infrastructure we've talked about, the parking garages and then all the, what you would consider typical public infrastructure, utilities, road improvements, sidewalks, those kind of things that you would typically see in the realm of public infrastructure. So as Mr. Klein described, the development agreement that the city has negotiated has put strict deadlines on them as far as when they've got to get this project done. It's defined the work that they've got to do and the timeline for that and what happens and the clawbacks that it doesn't happen. So as a result, this project's, as I've said, been approved by the IDB and by the City Council, and we would appreciate y'all moving forward with at least recommending it for approval to the other committees. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any other questions anyone has about TIF.
Questions? Commissioner Irvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I correct? There's no liability to the county.
That is correct. And I want to give you a personal example, okay? Just so that you'll understand this, because I represented the Redevelopment Authority in Nashville several years ago, and they approved a TIF deal in Nashville that was approved in 2006, I think, was constructed in 2007, and when it came time to occupy it, they couldn't, they were condos, they couldn't they were apartments, they couldn't find people that would rent the apartments because the economy was so bad. And so they had the lender, and this was one where a lender had actually put the money up front with a loan to a non-recourse loan to the Industrial Development Board, or to the Housing Authority, which was the development agency. They did a non-recourse loan to the housing agency, and then there wasn't enough increment to pay the loan because the taxes generated from the project were way less than what the debt service on the loan was. So I think it was it was a 6-month payment. Every 6-month payment period, the bank would send us a letter and say, you're not paying our debt service. And we'd write them back and say, yep, we paid you all the taxes that we've received, and that's all you're entitled to from us. You have to go against the developer. So that is the way these deals are structured, is you have no responsibility if the taxes are not sufficient.
Thank you. On the clawbacks cover, one of the reasons this has been very nice, it's a great presentation, pitched as the management team and the ownership and all of that. Is there a clawback for a change in management or a change in ownership? In other words, if they were to hypothetically flip it, is that a clawback event?
I think it is. I'm not positive, but I'll have to go back and look and answer that question. I believe consent is required if the developer wants to assign the development agreement to another party, but I'll confirm that.
Okay. And could we get a copy, or the commission maybe distribute it to put it on the website, a copy of the development agreement or the draft?
Sure.
Okay.
It's a public document, so yes.
Okay. On a question, I guess, that I've been asked from some county employee types, is there going to be adequate parking for county employees who park there in these dedicated spaces now? And I know Bart kind of started to address this, but I've heard a concern that these are going to be built and the places where we park are going away. How's that going to be dealt with?
Yeah, so I'm familiar with the question too, and I think it has to do with the Limbaugh Library converting to election services and other county services. So right now that parking garage is 600 spaces and maybe 180 are utilized on a daily case. So the city understands this, and they're going to reserve parking for all officials that work in the building. And then they will have gates at the public entries, and it'll have to be controlled. So there'll be no chance because you're going to have your space, this is where you park, that someone's going to take your parking space.
Okay. And then, okay. Mr. Murphy, I believe, had talked about the process. Are there any agreements in place currently?
The development agreement has been approved and the purchase and sale agreement have been approved. Those are not agreements that have to be approved by the city or the county. Those, well, the city approved the development agreement, but the purchase and sale. Yeah, excuse me. Yes, so the purchase and sale agreement is with the city and with the other owner. That's been in place. And the development agreement was approved by the city, so I think it's in place. So yes, I think they're all subject to this agreement, this plan being approved. So, you know, this is the triggering event for all of those to be effective.
To close.
To close.
We have to get through PUD and have.
So purchase and sale agreements in place, fully signed, contingent on developer agreement, same. Okay. Is there any, what's the status of the equity that's going to be required in this deal?
So, like all development deals, what happens with the bank, we have banks that have submitted letters, very interested, ready to go. The contribution the development team has to pay the engineering and architecture team to create the drawings to get them to a level for the bank to put to finance it is about $3.5 to $4 million. The developer's already into this about $500,000 to $600,000 on where they are now. So basically, in this schedule that we show here, that fourth blue line, roughly 3 months from the end, will be at 80% documents, and then the bank will actually give you a commitment letter. The banks will all stand up and say, hey, we love the project, we're going to finance it, but you know how that goes. You got to put your money where the mouth is, get it done, and then they put it, finance the deal. We are happy because the local banker, Al Miller, has very interested in the project. He's in very much support of the project, has been since day one. I know First Horizon's interested in the project. Also, the development team here, they own a lot of their properties. They keep. They don't flip. So, and they have a lot of, I guess, connections, above my head. But, no different than any typical development deal, but you do have a seasoned group behind it.
Okay, so that kind of a mishmash of what I was asking. The equity piece, is that in place? And then you also address the financing piece. So what I heard was no and no, and I just want to make sure I understand exactly what you're saying. The equity piece.
Your question,
well, let me finish. How much of this is equity and how much of it's a debt, and how much of each is in place?
So that equity piece can't be purely defined if it's 30% or 40% until the drawings are done and the bank looks at it and what the interest rate is that day. So to tell you that there's $30 million in place and it's all set, I cannot speak on that. Other than we have to get to this approved, get the drawings done, get it in front of the bank. Then the terms of what the equity will have to be will come up. This team has been successful and are successful now in developing projects this size, so we're very comfortable with them being able to perform. But it's a little early to be asking that because we haven't even got approval. We got our development agreement with the city, and now we're seeking a TIF. But if this is successful, in about 8-9 months, we should be there. They should be able to answer that question spot on for you.
Question, Commissioner Irvin?
Answer Mr.
Go
Irvin's
ahead.
earlier question, which I looked at. Any assignment to a non-related party has to receive the city's consent.
Yeah, I'd still.
Assignment to a non-related party has to receive the city's consent. So there is a limit on, just the ability to flip to anyone without the city's consent. The other
County.
part, and the other part on your question about the finance and equity, I mean, that was one of the city's concerns was, is this a real deal? And that's why all these deadlines are in here that will trigger the ability to cancel the deal if they don't make it. And so that's how we accommodated the idea that they're not ready yet, but they need this approval to be able to move to the next step. And so we put in a provision where the economic impact plan can be terminated by the city or the county if they don't meet the deadlines.
Thank you. I'd like to see the agreements.
Yeah, I'll still be happy to give it to you, but I did find that, so I wanted to
Thank you.
not leave you in suspense.
I think Commissioner Irvin will be hearing it again. He's on budget. Any other questions? Any members got any questions? Commissioner Phillips?
I'm not sure what's the, if anything's appropriate. Let me try to put a motion into effect. I would move that property management approve the concept and forward on to the proper committees for consideration and approval, whether that be steering and or budget.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to, I'm going to have it amend, I would make a motion to amend to move it to other committees without the approval language, because I candidly have not made a decision. So.
Have an amendment?
It's to move it to the next committee without a recommendation.
Everyone understand the amendment?
I would recommend that the committee vote down the amendment.
Hadn't been a second yet. Do I hear a second on that amendment?
I'll second for discussion.
Second, Anthony Johnson for discussion. Any discussion from any committee members?
I would simply point out that while there a good deal of information has been provided, I think there's still some things up in the air, and I do think the committee process will be beneficial in getting more data out there, a better understanding. So I think, in my view, it is premature to approve this. I think that a better decision made probably at the budget and then the commission levels.
Any other discussion on the amendment?
Was my understanding we're not approving it tonight.
That was Commissioner Phillips or Chairman Phillips's motion.
My motion was to approve the concept and forward it on to, with a positive recommendation.
Right.
Other discussion on the amendment? All right, call the roll.
Commissioner Dodd?
No. No to the amendment.
Yes.
It'd be a yes on the first amendment if it fails. Yes. No to the
Just
amendment.
Just to the amendment right
Just
now.
that's the amendment
Thank you.
only.
Commissioner Wilson?
No.
Commissioner Phillips? No. Commissioner Irving?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
No.
Commissioner Davidson? Chairman McAdoo?
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, now we're back to the original motion. Do each member understand the original motion, or would they like to hear it again?
This is to approve the concept.
Correct.
And did we send it to appropriate committee?
Committee.
Forward it to the proper, through the proper channels at the proper committees, whether it be steering or budget and or both, with a positive recommendation.
Well, it would only go to steering if it's for information for them, because it doesn't fall in their wheelhouse under our rules as far as sending it to them for approval. It would just be for information. so they would know more about it when it would come to the commission.
Could we restate it? Because I just want to make sure there was language at the end of the restatement that said with a positive recommendation. I just want to make sure where we are on that.
One point to bring out is that it's already listed on the steering agenda.
I'm not sure whether it has to go to steering or not,
True.
but if it does,
Want to send it on.
the motion was to send it to whatever appropriate committee it needs to go to next with a positive recommendation, whether it's steering and/or budget.
Each member understand?
The meaning behind the motion is to move it forward
Right,
and not
I
delay it.
understand. Any other discussion on the original motion? If not, call the roll.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Irvin?
No.
Commissioner Phillips? Yes. Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Chairman McAdoo?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. I'll see you steering committee meeting night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chairman, could I ask for a pause before the next issue?
You can ask for a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Stewart's Landing TIF. Come forward.
Good evening. My name is Dominic Zabriskie. I've got some booklets. Our slides didn't make it to the appropriate person, so I've got some booklets I'm going to hand out. Once again, my name is Dominic Zabriskie, and I'm with Equitable Property Group. My partner, Land, is actually in Smyrna with a workshop session there, but we also have a representative with the city of, or the town of Smyrna. That's a questions. Equitable Property Group got involved with this property close to a year ago. It's owned by the town of Smyrna. It's 44 acres. Just adjacent to Motlow Boulevard. It's just south of the Motlow College there off Sam Ridley Boulevard. And the city has owned the property for close to 20 years, and during that time they've really targeted, at one point there was conversations of moving some of the administrative buildings and even City Hall to the property, I think at one point, and over the course of that conversation it was decided they were going to target more of a corporate headquarters relocation and or more office employment for the property, and that never played out. So at one point the city reached out and engaged a group of local development teams to kind of propose what they could envision for the property, and at the time Land and Equitable Property Group was one of those groups. And during the deliberation, Equitable Property Group was selected as the developer to take the property through the entitlement process, which was completed in the first quarter of this year. The entitlements consist of about 250,000 square feet of office space, another 285,000 square feet of retail space, 240 hotel rooms, and 75 residential condominium units. So in total, about 600,000 square feet of developable area over the 40 acres. During this time, one of the major components and focus that we have for the property is to create more of a town center and a walkable open area that really isn't currently available in the Smyrna area. The Murfreesboro has the Avenue and the Gateway District that really brought a lot of more walkability and shopping destination to Murfreesboro, and it's just something that's still lacking in Smyrna, and it's something that we envision to bring to the area to really recruit tenants, retailers, medical office users, hotels that we're seeing in Williamson County, in Davidson County, Century Farms, Berry Farms, those developments, kind of the same tenants and retail variety that right now a lot of residents of Smyrna and Rutherford County are going outside of the county and either shopping or dining outside of the county, and we want to target those same tenants to be able to capture those tax revenues here within the county itself. But in doing so, one of the things that those tenants demand or expect is a more walkable boulevard condition, a higher level of landscaping and pavers. So with that, we at the very last page of this booklet is an exhibit that shows the areas that are contemplated to be improved with the requested TIF financing, which consist of about 3.5 acres of right-of-way, so it's the streets and boulevard area highlighted there in red, and then another 3.5 acres or so of public open green space and an amphitheater that is about 3/4 of an acre and would have a capacity of about 1,000 people. So those spaces, once completed, would be dedicated back to the town of Smyrna, but it would be completed through the utilization of this TIF funding. So Jim can speak a little bit more about that, but it's similar to the project in Murfreesboro, where it's the public improvements that are really where these dollars are being invested. But it helps us recruit, attract, and retain a higher level of tenancy that Nashville and Davidson and Williamson County are able to have been able to attract with similar developments. I'm happy to answer any questions at this point, but that's kind of a high-level overview of what we've envisioned for Stewart's Landing.
Questions? Commissioner Irvin?
I'll keep this a little bit shorter. Liability to the county.
None. Same deal.
Drawback, clawbacks in the TIF?
This one is done on a phased development. So this one, they're going to have development agreements for each phase of the development, and they again don't get any incentive until they complete that phase. So it's tied to a pay-as-you-go as they complete the improvements. So this one doesn't have the same kind of deadline schedule that the Broad Street did, but it is also being done in a phased process so that there'll be, the incentive only gets paid after they complete each phase. So it'll be done as each phase goes along. They'll get reimbursement for the public infrastructure that's included in that phase.
Okay, is that available? Are all the documents that we have going to be already online? Sorry, I don't know.
On this deal, yes.
They're already online for.
Yeah, there's not an actual development agreement on this deal yet, because we're still working with the town of Smyrna on the details of that. But yes, everything that's available, everything that's currently in place is available online.
And is there a chart that outlines the milestones that you just?
There was not for this deal.
Because the development agreement's not done yet?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Okay. So no development agreement. What agreements are in place, if any?
Well, the economic impact plan has been approved and
by the IDB.
By the IDB and the city, and so it will then. Well, has it been approved by the city yet, or are they still?
It has.
I think it's actually been approved by the IDB. It's in the
workshop session.
They're working on it tonight at a workshop, and I think it's on their agenda for next week, for the city's agenda next week. And there is a funding agreement, I believe, that that should be available. If it's not, we'll provide that.
Funding for?
The funding for the TIF, it goes through and describes the TIF funding process.
Perfect. Okay. Overall equity and debt financing, where is that?
So this project's a little different in the sense of the phasing. A lot of the phasing are determined by the tenancy of each phase and the timing of their openings. We have the equity in terms of taking down the land, securing all the mass grading and site work and utilities and things like that. But until the lender knows what the terms of a lease, a lot of these leases won't be signed until we own the land. We aren't able to close on the land until these approvals are all satisfied. And then once we have leases signed, the lender will go back and review what the terms of the lease are and then give us what their term sheet is, and that'll allow us to go back to our equity partners and say, here's what the equity requirement is.
Okay, I'd like a little more info on on what you just described in terms of timelines, in terms of kind of expectations and how it's going to work.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Phillips?
Just one, if you could, I don't know how short-term you could do this, but there's this 6-to-1 ratio, almost 6-to-1 ratio. Could someone kind of go over that very briefly?
These economic development slides were prepared by Younger and Associates. This is a third-party economic research group that did the BJ's pilot and a number of other economic analysis. Within that analysis, one of the thresholds at the IDB is a minimum of a 3-to-1 payback. We're almost twice that at 6-to-1. The large reason for that is we have such a large retail component. So once fully developed, our retail sales tax is over $3 million a year in sales tax revenues. That's the bulk of the payback, but we've fully built out. We expect to have over 1,800 new jobs created, permanent on site. A lot of that's retail. We have 2 hotels. We've got 2 office buildings that we're targeting for medical office use. So it's in addition to those are what's not included is the sales tax, a lot of the payroll and hotel taxes and things of that nature. But the table outlines the TIF component of this is just the designation for debt service is $5.3 million of eligible tax revenue for the debt service. This being currently owned by the city of Smyrna, it does not currently generate any property tax. We've agreed to have the base assessment once we close on the property. We have a purchase and sale agreement that's been approved with the city, and once we close, that sale price will be recorded, and that the county tax assessor will make their assessment, and we'll pay the base taxes that aren't currently being received by the county now, and the city too.
Questions? Questions? I believe we would handle this one like we handled the Broad Street project. I entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make the exact same motion before that we approve the concept and forward it on to the proper appropriate committees with a positive recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Commissioner Dodd. Any other discussion? Irvin?
I'll just note that I need additional information as well before making a decision, so my vote now may not be reflected later.
Any other discussion? Everyone understand the motion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Phillips. Commissioner Irvin,
No.
Chairman McAdoo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Any other business come before us tonight? I was gonna bring that up. Since we got the new committee, we're discussing the tour of the nursing home prior to this. And at the time, they weren't ready for us to tour. But I think the committee need to proceed on and try to get a tour with the nursing home committee. Several reasons. Okay. We will have to probably put that one off because they're still in the process of interviewing. Some of you may not know that we pulled out of the contract that was operating the nursing home, so we're bringing it back in-house, as I understand, and they're doing the interviews for the director and all that good stuff, so we'll pause on that one. Any committee member have one that they would love for us to see next month? Oh, anybody have any? Commissioner Johnson?
Did any commissioners ever tour the jail? I know at one time it was mandatory, you had to once a month in public safety, but
Under that, it's still mandatory for that committee to, on that committee to tour the jail, but if the committee would like, we could set it up to tour the jail. I don't see too many saying yay, but I think it'd be an excellent idea to tour that jail because we went through a new process of how we put on roofs, and the jail was one of the first ones, and it saved us a lot of money. As Commissioner Phillips, you may remember that. And so it would be a good idea to see how it's progressing, how that roof is holding up out there. So if we want to look at it for other buildings and whatnot, we'd have some information on it, but I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, it might be appropriate to get with the public safety and see if we could have a joint tour.
Joint tour. I think I'll set that up or whatever when we get that information out to you. I think that'd be a great one. Any other business to come before us tonight? Commissioner Johnson?
forgive me, but I'm trying to remember if we changed our meeting date or not. We had discussed it.
We changed our meeting date, but the next two, I don't know how it worked out that way, but this one and the next one is falling on the same date that we always normally meet. So it just worked out perfect, Commissioner Phillips. I think the new schedule will probably kick in around November, and December we would have to make some adjustments because of the holiday. But as far as October, it's going to be the same as it's been in the past, even with the new schedule. So it worked out perfect. Any other discussion? Not entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you.